Today I'm going to talk about the new movie Weapons. This is a movie directed by Zach Krieger, who directed Barbarians a couple of years ago. And I remember when I saw Barbarians, I was so impressed that I actually felt compelled to do an immediate video right outside of the movie theater because I was so blown away by the virtuoso style of storytelling. And Weapons is similar in that, just like with Barbarians, it starts out fairly not simple, but it starts out with a mysterious event that's not understood, and nobody knows why it happened, and it's tragic and terrible. But it's seeming like it's going to be something that just remains a mystery, and then it goes crazy. It gets crazier and crazier and crazier. And the story goes in directions you would never have expected. But it's it ends up at a very different place from where you started, even though it makes sense. There's continuity from beginning to end, and the story is coherent, but it's just wild and unpredictable. Which was the same thing that happened with Barbarian. So I think it's just something about the way this guy writes and directs, something about his style that favors this kind of what I would call virtuoso storytelling, just in the sense that it's. I mean, I've heard people reviewing it talking about how it being crazy, it being bonkers, it being off the wall, and it is all those things. The direction in which the direction it goes is again something you would not predict, something that you absolutely did not see coming, and but it is a very satisfying ending, in that it brings things to a close, and although there's still some horror that remains, there's still it's not like everything has been resolved, and no harm has like all the harm that could have befallen everyone has been avoided. There is some residual call it trauma or whatever, but but uh, but it winds up being a much more satisfying ending than you were thinking it would be. Now, the premise, I guess I can talk about the initial premise of the movie, because it basically leads with the premise, and it's, if you've seen any of the previews for the movie, then you know what the precipitating event in the story is, which is that the movie's set in a smaller town, in something sort of a Stranger Things esque kind of town, and one third grade class had 18 students in it, and then on one night at exactly 2:17 in the morning, 17 of the 18 students in that class just got up from their beds and ran out the door of their houses and ran into the darkness, and were never seen again. Um, and only one student remained behind. So the teacher came back the next day to that class and found that all of her students were now missing, uh, and except for one lonely boy sitting in the back of the class. So that's where the story starts, and I with a premise like that, it made me think of certain Japanese type horror movies that I'd seen, like the Suicide Club, which I think I've talked about here, and other, like, if this were a Japanese movie, we would never find out why this happened. It would just remain this enigma. Um, and I sort of thought it was going to go in that direction at first. I thought we were ultimately just going. It was ultimately just going to leave us unsatisfied, and we would be left with the enigma of these students just suddenly deciding to leave in the wee hours of the morning at exactly the same time, and run out with their arms spread apart, as if they're like learning to fly, or if they're about to like take flight. But we do, because this is an American movie, not a Japanese movie, we do find out why. Eventually, we find out why this has happened. But it takes a long and winding road, narratively, to get us there, and it's a story told in non-linear fashion, and it's a story told from the points of view of several different characters. So we see from the point of view, first, of the teacher character, who's after this incident where 17 of her students have suddenly disappeared. She's under heavy suspicion by a lot of the people in the town, that they think, what is she? How she's probably orchestrated this. She's some kind of witch, or something like that. So she's sort of persona non grata in the town, and having a hard time dealing with that situation. She's kind of a lonely, a little bit messed up woman. She's played by the that girl with the curly blonde hair, who's an Ozark, who's on the TV show Ozark, and she's got this sort of quietly unhinged quality about her, but you never really think that she's guilty of anything nefarious, although you're never sure, and until the end, until you find out. And I'm not going to give away the ending here, because I think this is worth seeing, so I'm not going to say anything about the ending. This is spoiler free. But so first we see from her point of view, and then we see from the point of view of Josh Brolin, who plays one of the dads of one of the kids who's missing, and who hates the teacher at first, and then until their paths sort of cross and they become unlikely allies at some point. And then we see from the point of view of another character and another character, and there's a cop who there's a policeman character who ends up having this harrowing and also hilarious sort of misadventure, and we meet the principal, and there's all kinds of stuff. There's unlikely humor. The movie is often hilarious, which you would not expect with a premise like this, like the one that I've put forth. You would not expect that this would be a funny movie, but it is. There are a lot of quite funny, quite unexpectedly funny moments. And I think there's something also funny, just as there was with Barbarian, there's something funny about just how nuts it all gets. And as it all gears up and as we speed toward the finale, the cathartic finale, um, it 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 only gains momentum. Um, but I wouldn't say that any of the horror is sacrificed because of the humor. I think that they coexist. Um, they're strange bedfellows, but they coexist. The humor and the horror manage to coexist in a way that where one doesn't spoil the other. And yeah, so it's a different kind of horror movie than some. You know, there's some horror that just there's some that's just some kinds of horror that are just cheesy and go for the cheap scares, and then there's this sort of quiet creeping horror um, that you would find in a movie like It Follows. Um, Also, I mean that might be one of my favorite horror genre movies from a few years ago. And then there's horror like the Zach Krieger style of horror, like we see in this movie and in Barbarian, where it's uh it's like a it's horror, but almost a zany kind of horror, like a horror where the stakes are uh, uh, the stakes get more and more crazy. The circumstances under which things are happening, the you know what starts with just this enigmatic event, uh, becomes this crazy scenario that gets crazier and crazier until the end. Um, so, highly recommend uh, this movie, Weapons. If unless you don't like scary movies, if you don't like scary movies, then of course don't go see it. But if you do, and even if you're uh, medium rare about horror movies, if you can take them or leave them, I would recommend seeing it. It might be. It's probably one of the best of the year so far. That's my review of Weapons.